Why hello there all you good people, I'm Dr. KHF McAwesome, anime scientist and one of the greatest minds in the universe.
You know that applauding you're hearing only exists in your head, right?
And I'm joined by my brilliant, though not as brilliant as me, student Emma Skye.
All I wanted was to study forensic science. How did I end up with this nut job as my mentor?
Oh please, my mentor was twice as crazy as I am.
That doesn't bode confidence.
It wasn't meant to. Anyway, I've dedicated my life to studying the different forms of science throughout the multiverse.
Which is why we're talking about a series that revolves around magic today.
Ah, but there is great scientific knowledge to be gained by studying a world encased in such mystical energies, my dear Emma.
I don't know which part of that sentence to correct first.
But yes, indeed, I'm going to be presenting you with my findings on the TV version of the anime Little Witch Academia. For those of you who don't know, Little Witch Academia was a short anime film produced by what I'm sure is the internet's favourite name for an anime studio, Trigger Studios, who you might know for such series as Kill la Kill. That's such a charming name for a series, isn't it? Anyway, it followed the story of a young girl looking to follow in the footsteps of her childhood hero and become a great witch, despite her bumbling nature. Think of it as the anime answer to The Worst Witch.
The what?
The film was so popular it even garnered a sequel which was in part funded by Kickstarter, entitled Little Witch Academia: The Enchanted Parade. Like its predecessor, it was a huge success and left fans demanding more. So, long story short, that led to the creation of the TV series that I'm about to talk about today. Now, this is currently an ongoing series at the time of this recording. Only 5 episodes have aired with a scheduled release of 25 episodes.
You don't have to be a scientist to figure out how he's going to do this one.
Indeed, Emma. It's very likely that you will get 5 videos of me discussing this series and its fascinating world. However, I can only bring these videos out once a certain number of episodes have aired, so I'm sorry to say you can't expect them incredibly often. But in any case, let's get started with my thoughts on this series, shall we?
Strap yourselves in, folks. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Episode 1 begins pretty much exactly how the movie did, with our main character Akko as a child attending a performance of her hero Shining Chariot. In fact, when I watched this, I thought I had actually put on the movie by mistake. But in any case, we cut to many years later where we see our hero moving to England in order to become a witch just like her hero. Naturally, because the series is set in England, all the English characters are snobby and stuck up, because that's how Japan believe we actually are.
But Kay, you are snobby and stuck up.
That may be, but that's only because I'm so much smarter than everybody else. In any case, I do like that we get some expansion on Akko's application to this academy. While it wasn't necessary to do this, it does help build on her character a bit. We also get to see how she met her 2 friends, Susie and Lotte. Due to some antics involving Akko's lack of skill on a broomstick, they end up falling into their school's forbidden forest. I think you're going to hear from Hogwarts' lawyers at some point. Wherein they're attacked by one of my escaped experiments.
You know that's a cockatrice, an actual mythological creature, right?
Oh, I know of the creature, but that actually is one of my escaped experiments. I was testing the effects of radiated Charizard blood on a chicken. It ended up going on a rampage and escaping. I called it Terry.
There's so much wrong with that explanation.
Anyway, Terry chases them through the not Hogwarts Forbidden Forest, and after some antics occur, and after Akko saves Lotte's life, she finds Shining Chariot's rod.
I beg your pardon?
I'm with you, Emma. This stuck out to me too. The way this happens is very different to how it happened in the movie. At first I thought this was just meant to expand on the events of the movie, but this is outright changing the series of events. So, is this meant to be a reboot?
I don't think you got what I was saying.
So, wait, you're rebooting your franchise just a little over a year after the second film airs. I think you might have actually beat Spider-Man's record for fastest franchise reboot in history. Well, to cut a long story short, because I have to talk about 5 episodes here, Akko uses Shining Chariot's rod to defeat Terry and owes me a lot of money for the research materials I used to make him. They arrive at the school safe and sound, and the 3 of them find out they're going to be roommates for the next 3 years. This was a fun episode and a great introduction to the franchise. It's also very approachable even if you haven't seen the movies. Heck, like I said, it's more or less a reboot. Although I suppose I should say soft reboot for those nitpicky peons who will doubtlessly... I have been informed that it's rude to refer to those less intelligent than myself as peons, and I would like to formally apologise to anybody I may have offended. What utter nonsense! Everything's offensive these days! I made a fire-breathing dragon chicken! What have you done with your life? But as I was saying, this episode is a lot of fun, and it establishes its characters and the mythology of the world well, while still keeping enough mystery to keep people coming back for more. Anyway, episode 2 introduces us to the rival character Diana, or as I like to call her...
The biggest white bitch who ever lived, it's Diana Cavendish!
Oh, and of course she's British! You can tell from her stuck-up attitude and superiority complex. Seriously, Japan, you have to watch it with those stereotypes. Actually, I think Diana is a much better established character here than she was in the movies, but I'll get back to that in just a bit. Anyway, it's in this episode that we find out Akko actually collects Shining Chariot trading cards, of which a game can actually be played with them. This did make me ponder, if Akko were to play Yu-Gi-Oh, what kind of deck would she play? But I think the answer's obvious. In fact, it's her love of these cards that leads to her ultimately saving the day in the end after a spell from Diana to restore the school's memorial tree goes wrong. This leads to Diana forming a sort of begrudging respect for her. This is what I mean by Diana being a bit better characterised in this series. In fact, going back to Yu-Gi-Oh, she actually reminds me a little bit of Seto Kaiba. Well, the original version of him at least, rather than the 4Kids version. Like him, she's well off, proud and standoffish, and believes that the only person that you can rely on is yourself, leading to her trying to solve every problem by herself. However, Akko's actions in this episode challenge her views on life and show her that sometimes it is okay to rely on another person. She doesn't necessarily have to like Akko, but she does begin to respect her, especially after she sees that there is some talent within her just buried deep down. It's very similar to how Kaiba respected Yugi despite not agreeing with his outlook on the world, and acknowledging his dueling talent.
I've got to hand it to you, Kay. Only a genius can make not one, but 2 Yu-Gi-Oh references in a video about Little Witch Academia.
What can I say, I have a talent. Anyway, it's because of this that I actually like Diana's character a lot more in this series than I did in the movies. Even if she is still...
the biggest white bitch who ever lived, it's Diana Cavendish!
Speaking of talent, that brings me into the next episode, wherein we see Akko's lack of talent with a broomstick. Despite this, she wants to enter into the school's broom relay race because she saw that Shining Chariot once won it when she was a student. Well, I think we all know how this one is going to turn out. She's gonna look like the underdog because she has no talent with a broom, and then some antics are going to ensue, but somehow she's ultimately gonna come out on top and win the race. You don't have to be a genius to figure out how this one is going to end. What's that? Wait, you're telling me they actually do something different with this concept? And that they actually give it a more mature and realistic ending? Now that blows my mind. We also get introduced to characters from the second movie, Amanda, Constance and Jasminka. While they don't get a lot of establishment, save for Amanda, who gets established as a troublemaker, they did have some genuinely hilarious moments that had me on the floor.
At first, I thought he was having a seizure.
These 3 are fun characters, and I do hope we get to see more of them in the future. The 4th episode was the one where I did roll my eyes a bit, as it's revealed that Lotte is a hardcore fangirl of this world's non-copyright version of Twilight. I'm dead serious. At first I thought, really? Twilight jokes in 2017? You're really going to do this? But actually the jokes were more about nerdy culture and revolves around Lotte going from her normally quiet and timid self to being an excitable fangirl. And they were actually very clever and funny. Huh. Intelligent Twilight jokes. Well, that requires some scientific study, surely! Oh, but it gets even more baffling than that, as it turns out that the author wants to quit writing because of all the persecution she goes through from critics and trolls on the internet. So, what we have here is an episode that revolves around a parody of Twilight that addresses some deep and modern issues that young people face today because of social media, which is a topic I don't often see explored in anime, that has some genuinely clever and witty humour. An episode that revolves around Lotte being a Twilight fangirl has deep themes and clever humour. Okay, this certainly does require scientific study. Not because of its magical or mystical foundation, but because it successfully found a way to make an intelligent episode about Twilight. Emma, begin analysis on this episode immediately.
I'm on it.
These writers, they're the true geniuses here. Especially with what happened in the most recent episode. The plot establishes the Sorcerer's Stone. Wait, are we absolutely certain they don't mean Philosopher's Stone? You're absolutely sure? Completely different myth. Okay, just making sure. Anyway, the plot revolves around dragons stealing the Philosopher's Stone, thus cutting off their source of magic. This was another plot I did roll my eyes at first, because I thought this was just going to be a by-the-book story about dragons being defeated by school children, and Akko ultimately winning the day despite being a screw-up. So imagine my surprise when there's actually a very funny and clever plot twist on this in the second half. I won't spoil what happened because it is the most recent episode at the time of this recording, but I will say it was another moment that had me on the floor laughing. Plus, there were some great moments with Constance and Jasminka along the way. But perhaps most mind-boggling of all, there was actually a moment where we hear a grunt from Constance, a character who never speaks. So this means that so far, she has actually made more noise in this series than she did throughout the entirety of the second movie. Yet, in both versions of the movie, she was credited as having voice actors. Strange. But getting back on point, this series is once again taking a tired and cliché plot and putting its own original spin on things and made it very clever and funny. This could potentially be the most ingenious anime series I've seen in a long time. If you haven't been watching this series yet, I highly recommend that you do, regardless of whether you've seen the movies or not. It's fun, it's clever, it's funny, and it does some great spins on old plots. The characters are all very likeable in their own rights, and I would actually argue that they're much better established here than they were in the movies. They also do a very good job of making this mystical world that they live in look incredibly interesting. I look forward to seeing more from this series, and further analysing how it was they were able to do an intelligent Twilight episode. It still boggles my mind.
Kay, we have a problem. The incubators you were studying escaped. I think they heard you talking about teenagers with magical powers.
Ah, crap. We'll have to capture them again. Well, folks, I would love to stay and talk to you more about this series, but I've got a problem I have to go take care of, so I will see you all later. There's one!
I got it, Kay!
Alphanumeric, Emma! There's the other one! Right, quick, give me the box. You distract it and I'll get it from behind.
Right! Hey, Furball! Your mother was a purloin!
Two in the box.
Ready to go.
We be fast
And they be slow.